The stars stretched endlessly across the void, their cold light reflecting off the sleek hulls of human ships. The human fleet had been stationed near the outer edge of the Coalition's controlled space for weeks, but no one had expected the calm to last. Humans were known across several systems for their unpredictability in war, their courage, and their ability to act when others hesitated. Even among allies, there was a sense of quiet tension when humans moved into position. Everyone seemed to feel it, though few could say why. The Coalition forces were scattered across the sector, a mix of species, each with their own style of thinking about combat. Some relied on raw power, others on cunning or strategy, and a few on sheer numbers. But humans were different. They spoke little, made few grand gestures, and yet when they prepared for a fight, the presence alone suggested something unstoppable was brewing. Even before the enemy appeared, there was a hum of expectation that humans carried with them. Inside the command vessel, humans went about their preparations calmly. Engineers checked systems multiple times, recalibrating weapons and shields, but always quietly, without alarm. Pilots ran simulations and flight drills, but no one shouted or made sudden movements. It was almost as if the human ships themselves absorbed the tension of the fleet, spreading a strange calm among the Coalition allies who watched with unease. The commander, a seasoned officer with years of combat experience, moved slowly along the corridors. There was no hurry, no unnecessary motion. Every decision was measured, every action deliberate. He paused at observation windows, looking at the stars stretching toward unknown systems. In that silence, he thought about what might come, about the weight of the responsibility resting on his shoulders. Battles could end in minutes or hours, but their consequences would last a lifetime. He understood that the true cost of war was never the number of ships destroyed or enemies defeated. It was the toll it took on those who survived. Outside the human command vessel, alien fleet members moved in patterns that seemed almost chaotic to the humans. Communication signals bounced back and forth as Coalition leaders argued over tactics. Some wanted to attack immediately, others urged caution. Their voices carried tension, and their ships moved in ways that seemed frantic. The humans observed it all quietly. They did not react, did not issue counters, and in that stillness, they made everyone uneasy. Silence, it seemed, could be more frightening than an actual attack. On the bridge, young officers monitored long-range scanners. The first detection of the enemy came not as a sudden alarm, but as a subtle shift in the readings. The enemy fleet was approaching, its numbers large and intimidating, and its technology advanced beyond anything most allies had faced before. Panic rippled through the Coalition forces. Messages and alerts filled communication channels. Orders were shouted, plans rewritten, and yet the human fleet did not move with panic or fear. They continued to check their systems, readying for action with quiet determination. One of the alien commanders, a tall creature with multiple arms, turned to his peers. "Why are the humans doing nothing? Are they unaware of the danger?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Another shook his head. "It is their way. We cannot understand it. But history shows, when humans act, everything changes." The first commander frowned, still unsure, but he could not deny the truth in the words. Humans had a reputation that preceded them, even among races that had never fought alongside them before. Meanwhile, inside the human fleet, smaller crews prepared in their own ways. Pilots went over their flight manuals, running through maneuvers mentally, imagining every possible scenario. Engineers checked weapon alignment, shields, and propulsion systems again and again, not out of fear, but to ensure that nothing would fail at the critical moment. Even the youngest cadets felt the seriousness of what lay ahead. Sensing the weight of history pressing down on them, the commander walked through one of the human hangars, watching technicians calibrate ships and weapons. He did not speak, but his presence carried authority. People moved with quiet focus, no need for loud commands. There was trust in every glance exchanged, trust built over years of training and shared experiences. That trust, more than any technology or weapon, was what made humans formidable. Others could have armies and fleets, but humans had something harder to measure, a sense of unity and timing that often came at the perfect moment. Outside the fleet, the enemy continued its approach. Their scanners picked up the human ships, but for some reason, the humans did not respond in ways the enemy expected. No defensive maneuvers, no opening fire, no displays of aggression. This unusual silence unnerved both the enemy and the coalition allies. It created a tension in the air that was almost tangible. Everyone waited, wondering when the first strike would come. If it would come at all. In the quiet of his quarters, the human commander reflected on what made them different. Other species often rushed into battle, reacting emotionally, making noise, or displaying power. Humans, he knew, relied on observation, patience, and precision. They let the enemy reveal their own weaknesses first. The silence was not hesitation, it was strategy. It was a way to force others to act, to make mistakes, and to prepare for the moment when humans would finally strike. Back on the observation deck, junior officers watched the stars, noting the approach of the enemy fleet. They whispered among themselves, unsure of what the humans were planning. Some admired their calm, others feared it. Even the veterans admitted a certain awe at the discipline humans displayed. It was not arrogance or bravado. It was something deeper, an understanding of consequences, an ability to see the long game while others reacted to the short-term chaos. As hours passed, the human fleet maintained its silent posture. The enemy moved closer, scanning for any sign of weakness. The coalition allies could not understand why humans did not respond immediately. They feared that silence meant inaction, but the humans knew that patience was a weapon as sharp as any laser or missile. Every movement they made was deliberate, every adjustment calculated to ensure maximum effectiveness at the right moment. A night sky of space, scattered with stars and distant planets, seemed calm. But everyone aboard the ships knew that the storm was coming. The humans moved quietly among their stations, checking and rechecking systems. Pilots strapped in, engineers monitored power outputs, and the commander watched, listening, observing, feeling the rhythm of the fleet. In this quiet, everyone sensed the inevitability of what was about to happen. The story of that moment would be remembered for years in the coalition. Not because humans were the loudest or the fastest to act, but because their presence alone changed the way others saw battle. There was a certain respect, tinged with fear, for the species that could sit in silence, watch the enemy, and prepare for a strike that would come when least expected. And as the first glimmers of the enemy fleet reflected on the human ships, no one spoke. Humans did not need to. Their silence carried a warning stronger than words, stronger than lasers, stronger than any fleet. The galaxy had learned something simple but profound. When humans go silent in combat, everything else falls into place. The calm before the storm was not just a pause. It was the beginning of a strategy that would change the course of the battle and leave the allies and enemies alike in awe. The humans were ready. They had always been ready, and they would act when the moment was right. Until then, silence reigned, and the universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. The human fleet drifted quietly through space, their ships like shadows among the stars. The enemy fleet had been detected hours ago, its presence growing larger and more threatening with every passing moment. Despite the reports and warnings from coalition allies, the humans did not rush, did not panic, and did not signal alarm. Their calm was unsettling, but it was deliberate. They had learned long ago that rushing into conflict often meant making mistakes, and mistakes in space could be fatal. From the command vessel, The human commander observed the enemy through the scanners. The fleet approaching was massive, far larger than most humans had ever faced. Their ships gleamed with advanced technology, weapons more powerful than the Coalition's own, and shields capable of withstanding conventional attacks. Many of the Coalition leaders were panicking, their voices rising as they discussed tactics. They wanted to strike immediately, believing that hesitation would lead to defeat. The humans remained silent. They spoke only in low, measured tones to each other, coordinating movements that no one else could see. Engineers adjusted energy flows to weapons and propulsion systems, not in haste, but in careful preparation. Pilots checked their controls and practiced maneuvers, not for the sake of speed, but to ensure precision when the time came. Every action, no matter how small, was part of a larger plan. The enemy's first probes scanned the human fleet, looking for weaknesses, trying to provoke a reaction. They expected humans to respond with either aggression or retreat. Neither happened. The humans did not fire, did not move dramatically, and did not signal fear. They simply watched, silently, like a predator observing its prey. Coalition allies grew uneasy. Messages flooded the human ships. Why do you not respond? Do you realize the danger? We need action now. Each message was met with calm acknowledgement, but no immediate answer. Some aliens shook their heads in frustration. They had grown used to quick decisions in battle, to commands shouted and orders given loudly, but humans did not operate that way. They relied on patience, observation, and timing. Inside the human command vessel, the commander walked among his officers. He moved slowly, deliberately, his presence alone commanding attention. Watch the patterns, he said quietly. Notice their tendencies. Do not act until we know their next move. The officers nodded, understanding that the calm was not indecision. It was a strategy. The humans were learning the enemy, studying their behavior, and waiting for the perfect moment to act. The enemy fleet, sensing the silence, became cautious. Their sensors scanned continuously, searching for the slightest indication that humans were preparing to strike. But the humans left no clue. Energy flows were adjusted, shields optimized, weapons primed, but everything was hidden behind layers of careful planning. The enemy could not read them, and that frustration began to show. Ships moved in tighter formations. Communications became louder, and minor mistakes started to appear in their maneuvers. In the hangars of the human fleet, smaller teams worked tirelessly. Mechanics checked every engine and weapon system multiple times. Pilots ran simulations over and over, imagining attacks from every possible angle. Young recruits watched and learned, absorbing the discipline that defined human crews. Even when the enemy fired minor testing shots, humans did not respond immediately. They observed, analyzed, and prepared. Every action had a purpose. One junior officer watched the approaching enemy and whispered to a colleague, "Why aren't they reacting? Are we waiting for something?" The colleague shrugged, but said nothing. Everyone in the human fleet understood that silence was not indecision. It was power. They had seen this approach before, in smaller skirmishes and in simulations. Patience, precision, and trust in each other always paid off. The human commander returned to the observation deck. From there, the approaching enemy looked immense, threatening, almost unstoppable. But he was not afraid. He thought about what made humans different from other species. Others relied on strength, on overwhelming numbers, or on fear tactics. Humans relied on understanding, on anticipating moves, on using silence as a weapon. When the time was right, that silence would break in a sudden, unstoppable wave. Communication with the Coalition continued, but humans spoke only when necessary. They gave updates about readiness, but they did not issue commands the way others might. Their allies began to realize that humans did not need constant guidance. Humans had learned to act when it mattered, to trust in their training, and to move as one. This calm confidence inspired both respect and apprehension among coalition members. As the enemy fleet drew closer, minor skirmishes began. The enemy sent small reconnaissance ships to test human defenses. They fired a few weak shots, hoping to provoke a response. The humans watched silently, tracking every movement, noting every pattern. When one small enemy ship made a tactical error, humans waited just long enough for it to become vulnerable, then neutralized it with precision. The strike was quick, efficient, and devastating. The message was clear. Humans observed, they waited, and when they struck, it was with purpose. Across the coalition, whispers spread about the humans' unusual tactics. "They are different," one alien officer said. "They do not react like anyone else. Their silence is powerful." Another nodded, watching the aftermath of the first human strike. "I have never seen such control. We must learn from them, or we will fail." Humans did not care for praise. They focused only on the task at hand. Their priority was the mission, not recognition. Even within the enemy fleet, the effect of human silence was becoming clear. Their commanders grew frustrated, trying to force a reaction, to draw humans into mistakes. But the humans remained steady. They let the enemy make errors, wasting energy and resources on futile maneuvers. Every misstep by the enemy was noted and remembered, creating opportunities that would soon be exploited. In the human command center, officers prepared detailed reports of enemy movements. Every ship, every maneuver, every pattern was recorded and analyzed. The human strategy relied on knowledge. They studied the enemy, predicted moves, and waited for the right moment to strike. Their silence was more than patience. It was a careful collection of information that would ensure victory when the time came. Outside the ships, space seemed calm, almost peaceful. Stars glittered in the distance, oblivious to the tension below. Yet the calm was deceptive. Each human ship was a hive of silent activity. Engines hummed, shields glowed faintly, and weapons primed for action. Every crew member moved with purpose, knowing that even a single mistake could be catastrophic. The quiet intensity created an almost sacred atmosphere, as if the fleet itself understood the importance of restraint and timing. Hours passed, and the humans remained observant. They did not fire in haste. They did not reveal their full strength. They moved in quiet coordination, adjusting positions subtly, out of view of the enemy. Every maneuver was precise, every adjustment deliberate. The enemy, unable to anticipate human actions, began to falter. Small mistakes accumulated, creating gaps and vulnerabilities that humans would exploit later. One young engineer paused to reflect on the situation. Watching the humans work, she realized that their power was not just in their ships or weapons. It was in their ability to stay calm under pressure, to act with purpose, and to trust one another completely. Even when facing a superior enemy, humans could find strength in patience and precision. That was a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life. By the time the first true engagement was about to begin, humans had gathered enough information. The enemy had revealed patterns, weaknesses, and mistakes. Coalition allies were still anxious, waiting for action, unsure of what humans were planning. But the humans remained calm. Their silence was not empty. It was filled with calculation, readiness, and understanding. The enemy fleet moved closer, unaware of the trap being set. Small skirmishes had given humans the knowledge they needed. Every ship, every weapon, every crew member was ready. And yet, there was no panic, no haste. The humans continued to observe, to prepare, to wait for the perfect moment. Their silence had created fear and uncertainty in both, allies and enemies alike. As the stars stretched endlessly in the distance, the human fleet prepared for the moment that would define the battle. Every officer, every pilot, every engineer understood their role. They had learned the value of patience, the power of silence, and the strength of unity. And when the time came, the silence would end not with hesitation, but with action precise, devastating, and unforgettable, even as the enemy drew closer. Unaware of what awaited them, the human commander smiled quietly. His fleet was ready. They had watched, studied, and prepared. Now they only needed to act. And when they did, the galaxy would see why humans were feared and respected wherever they went. The calm before the storm was ending, and the first strike of humanity's quiet power was about to begin. The galaxy waited, holding its breath, knowing that when humans acted, nothing would be the same again. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, but within that void, the tension was almost tangible. The human fleet remained in silence, each ship a quiet sentinel among the stars. They had observed the enemy for hours, studying every movement, every adjustment, and every minor error. Patience had been their ally, and observation had become their weapon. Now, the moment was approaching where the silent strategy would begin to take shape. Inside the command vessel, the commander moved along the bridge with slow, deliberate steps. Officers and crew followed a rhythm known only to humans, checking instruments and systems without hurry or panic. Every movement was precise, every gesture measured. The humans had long learned that haste often led to mistakes. Waiting, watching, and understanding, these were the tools of victory. The enemy fleet, unaware of what humans were planning, began to show signs of confusion. Their formations wavered, and communication channels buzzed with uncertainty. They had expected immediate aggression, or at least a defensive maneuver, but neither came. The human silence was disorienting. It was as though the enemy was facing an unknown variable, a force that could not be predicted or controlled. Coalition allies watched the humans with a mix of awe and anxiety. Many whispered among themselves, wondering what the humans intended. Some were frustrated, unable to understand why action had not yet been taken. Others recognized the pattern from previous encounters. Human patience was not weakness. It was discipline, a silent kind of power that would soon reveal itself. On the hangar decks, engineers worked quietly, adjusting power flows to engines and shields. Pilots ran simulations in their minds, imagining attacks from every possible angle. Even young recruits understood the seriousness of the moment, the weight of the waiting. They did not fidget or complain. They knew that every second spent observing was a second gained in understanding the enemy. The commander paused at an observation window, staring out into the void. The enemy fleet was massive, but humans did not fear numbers. They had learned long ago that superior technology or greater numbers did not guarantee victory. Strategy, timing, and understanding could outweigh raw strength, and humans were masters of these things. A minor skirmish erupted as a small enemy reconnaissance ship attempted to test the human defenses. It fired a weak beam, more as a warning than a true attack. The humans did not react immediately. They tracked the ship's path, noting its speed, angle, and response time. Only when the enemy ship made a tactical error did humans strike, taking it down with precise, calculated force. The impact was minimal, but enough to send a clear message. Humans watched, humans waited, and humans acted only when it mattered most. The ripple effect was immediate. The enemy fleet grew cautious. They adjusted formations, repeated scans, and tried to force a reaction from humans. But the humans remained calm. Every move by the enemy was carefully observed and recorded. The humans were mapping their opponent in real time, learning their habits, their tendencies, and their weaknesses. Each mistake the enemy made was logged, ready to be exploited when the time came. In one of the human vessels, a young officer spoke quietly to a colleague. "It's strange. They don't rush. They don't panic. They just watch. And yet, I can feel something powerful about this calm. The colleague nodded. It's more than calm. It's understanding. They know what the enemy will do before it even happens. That's the difference. Meanwhile, across the command vessel, the commander gathered the senior officers. Observe everything, he instructed. Notice every shift in their formations, every hesitation, every attempt to force us into action. Wait for the moment when they expose themselves. That is when we will act. The officers listened intently, understanding that silence was their greatest weapon. The humans did not need to rush into battle. They had already begun to shape it with quiet observation. The enemy fleet tried several maneuvers designed to provoke humans. They sent faster ships to flank, launched minor attacks on the outer edges of the human fleet, and attempted to create confusion. Yet every move was anticipated. Humans adjusted shields, repositioned vessels subtly, and monitored every reaction without revealing their own plan. The enemy could not force them into error, because humans had already accounted for every possibility dot in the hangars. Engineers worked on weapon alignment and propulsion systems, ensuring that every strike would hit its mark. Pilots practiced maneuvers and simulations, visualizing potential attacks and responses. Even in moments of intense observation, humans did not lose focus. Their discipline, honed over years of training and experience, allowed them to maintain calm while others around them faltered. The calm and precise approach of humans had another effect on their allies. Coalition members, who had initially doubted the human strategy, began to relax, learning from their composure. Observing humans, they started to mimic small elements of their behavior: careful observation, patience, and trust in one another. Humans were teaching without words, demonstrating the strength that comes from silence and calculation. Back on the bridge of the command vessel, the commander reviewed long-range scans. He observed the enemy fleet, noting small errors. A ship moving slightly out of formation, a weak point in a shield grid, hesitation in response to a minor strike. These small imperfections were building a picture of vulnerability. The humans had already planned how to exploit these weaknesses when the time came. The enemy fleet grew increasingly frustrated. Their attempts to provoke the humans into action failed repeatedly. Each error they made, each misstep, became another advantage for the humans. The quiet patience of humanity was beginning to dominate the psychological battlefield. The enemy had expected noise, aggression, and fear. Instead, they faced calm, observation, and inevitability. On the observation deck, junior officers recorded every movement. Notes were made, strategies refined, and predictions calculated. They understood that every piece of data could be crucial. Humans relied not on instinct alone, but on information and planning. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they trusted their preparation and training dot in the hangars. Small groups of technicians moved between ships, checking systems silently. Weapons were aligned, engines optimized, and shields calibrated. There was no rush, no panic, only quiet focus. Every adjustment was deliberate, every action part of a larger strategy that would soon be revealed. The enemy launched another series of minor attacks, trying to break human composure. They fired multiple energy beams, tested shields, and sent small groups of fighters toward vulnerable points. Yet the humans remained steady. Shields absorbed the attacks, sensors tracked the enemy's every movement, and countermeasures were deployed only when necessary. Their silence was unbroken, and with it, control of the situation was slowly shifting in their favor. The commander watched these developments and gave quiet instructions. Focus on weaknesses. Wait for the pattern to complete. Then act. His officers understood. Every observation, every minor adjustment, and every calculated move was part of the same plan. The humans were not just preparing for battle, they were shaping it in their favor, silently, steadily, and with perfect timing. Hours passed, and the humans continued their silent strategy. The enemy, growing increasingly anxious, began to make mistakes at a faster rate. Their formation faltered, ships drifted slightly out of line, and minor miscalculations appeared in their communications. Every misstep was noted by the humans, each one adding to the growing advantage that patience and observation had built. Even young recruits, watching the unfolding events, began to understand the power of silence. They saw that human strength was not just in weapons or numbers, but in discipline, foresight, and trust. Every person, from the pilot to the engineer to the commander, had a role to play. Together, they formed a force that could turn observation into action and patience into power. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the human fleet, the stage was set. The enemy had revealed weaknesses, and the humans had gathered all the knowledge they needed. The calm before the storm had been maintained, the silent strategy executed perfectly. Every crew member knew their role, every system was ready, and every calculation had been made. The moment of action was approaching, though it had not yet arrived. Humans remained silent, not out of hesitation, but out of purpose. They waited for the exact moment when observation would turn into precise action, when patience would become strategy, and when silence would finally break in a wave of unstoppable force. And in that silence, the enemy fleet trembled, unaware of the trap that had been set. The humans had created a battlefield not of noise, not of panic, but of understanding and anticipation. Every movement, every calculation, and every moment of restraint had led to this point. The galaxy would soon witness the power of silence in combat, and no one would forget it. The silence that had filled the human fleet for hours was about to break, but not in chaos or panic. Instead, it would break with precision, with purpose, and with a force that no one in the galaxy could ignore. The humans had observed, waited, and prepared, and now the first decisive strike was approaching. Every crew member knew their role, every system had been calibrated, and every movement had been rehearsed 1,000 times in simulations. The commander walked slowly along the bridge, observing the enemy through the wide, clear windows. The fleet ahead was massive, but it was no longer intimidating. The humans had studied every ship, every maneuver, every pattern of response. They had noted every hesitation, every error, and every exposed vulnerability. The enemy had revealed itself piece by piece, unknowingly handing the humans the advantage. All eyes across the coalition watched the human fleet with a mixture of awe and anxiety. Many had doubted the human strategy, frustrated by their silence and lack of immediate action. But now, as the first signs of movement began, those doubts were replaced with fascination. The humans did not rush blindly into battle. They acted only when everything was aligned, when every variable had been accounted for, and when victory was within reach. In the hangars, engineers made final adjustments to weapon systems, ensuring that every laser, missile, and energy beam would hit precisely where it was intended. Pilots reviewed their flight paths one last time, mentally rehearsing every maneuver. Even the youngest recruits felt the tension, understanding that what they were about to do would define the battle. There was no fear in their eyes, only focus and determination. The first wave of the enemy moved forward, attempting to probe the human defenses once again. They expected the same hesitation they had encountered earlier, hoping to exploit it. But this time, humans were ready. With a subtle shift in formation, the first group of human ships accelerated, moving with perfect coordination. The enemy had no warning. Their sensors had been fooled, their assumptions proven wrong, and their confidence shaken. A small skirmish erupted at the edges of the fleet. Human ships struck swiftly and decisively, targeting weak points the enemy had left exposed. The attacks were precise, almost surgical, disabling key systems without unnecessary destruction. The enemy scrambled to respond, but each action they took had already been anticipated. Every strike by the humans seemed inevitable, as if they could predict the enemy's moves before they even happened. On the bridge of the command vessel, the commander gave calm, low instructions. Focus on their vulnerabilities. Move in coordination. Watch for hesitation. His officers executed the orders without hesitation. Every crew member understood that this was the moment where observation became action, where patience became power. The human fleet moved as one organism, each ship complementing the others. Every attack coordinated with deadly efficiency. The enemy fleet began to falter. Ships were disabled, their formations broken, and communication disrupted. The humans had exploited every weakness they had discovered during hours of observation. Coalition allies, previously unsure, watched in awe as the humans executed a strategy that seemed almost impossible. The tide of battle had shifted in an instant. Yet the humans remained composed, focused, and precise. In the hangars, technicians monitored energy outputs and weapon systems, ready to make adjustments if needed. Pilots navigated complex maneuvers, weaving through enemy fire with skill born from years of training. Even minor errors by the enemy were capitalized on immediately, turning small advantages into decisive blows. The humans did not rely on luck. They relied on preparation, skill, and coordination. As the battle intensified, the enemy attempted to regroup, but every move was anticipated. Human ships cut off escape routes, blocked reinforcements, and isolated key targets. The enemy had assumed their superior numbers and technology would be enough, but they had not accounted for the humans' patience, observation, and precise timing. Every advantage they had was nullified by the humans' silent strategy. A young officer on the observation deck noted the enemy's mistakes. "They're overextending," he whispered to his colleague. "They think they're gaining ground, but they're moving into our control zones." The colleague nodded, understanding immediately. Humans had set traps not with words or threats, but with careful positioning and calculated patience. The enemy had fallen into these traps without realizing it, and now the humans were striking with deadly precision. The commander observed the unfolding battle with quiet satisfaction. He did not celebrate. Victory was not yet complete. There were still dangers to navigate, and every strike had to be calculated to avoid unnecessary loss. But the human fleet was in control. Every movement, every attack, every adjustment was part of a larger plan, executed flawlessly. The enemy could only react, and their reactions played directly into human hands. In the midst of the chaos, a small group of enemy ships attempted a daring counterattack. They targeted the center of the human formation, hoping to break through and create confusion. But humans were ready. Shields were strengthened, weapons focused, and the counterattack was met with precise, coordinated fire. The enemy ships were quickly neutralized, their attempt at disruption failing completely. The coalition allies began to realize the magnitude of what they were witnessing. The humans had turned observation into action, silence into strategy, and patience into power. They were not just fighting. They were controlling the battle, shaping it according to their own understanding. Every move by the enemy was anticipated and countered, every mistake punished, every weakness exploited. Even minor systems on human ships worked flawlessly. Engines responded instantly, weapons fired with deadly accuracy, and shields adapted to enemy attacks in real time. The human crews moved with a calm efficiency that seemed almost superhuman. Their training, discipline, and focus had prepared them for this exact moment, and they executed every step with perfect precision. As the battle continued, the enemy fleet began to retreat in confusion. They had underestimated the humans' ability to observe, anticipate, and act. Their own overconfidence had become their downfall. The humans did not chase recklessly. Instead, they maintained control, striking only where necessary, guiding the enemy into disadvantageous positions. and ensuring that the battle remained firmly in human hands. In one of the smaller human vessels, a pilot reflected quietly on the unfolding events. "We didn't rush," he thought. "We waited. We watched. And now we control the fight." His words were not spoken aloud, but they captured the essence of humanity's strategy. Victory had not come from brute force alone, but from patience, observation, and precise execution. The commander surveyed the battlefield one last time. Enemy formations were scattered, key ships disabled, and morale collapsing. The humans had achieved a turning point. They had taken the advantage, not by overwhelming the enemy with sheer numbers, but by exploiting their errors, anticipating their moves, and acting with precision. The silent strategy had succeeded. Even after the decisive strikes, humans did not celebrate loudly. They maintained discipline, continuing to observe, adjust, and prepare for any counterattacks. They knew that victory was not final until the enemy was fully neutralized. Their calm focus, even in the face of success, was part of what made them so formidable. Allies and enemies alike began to understand that humans did not need to boast or shout. Their power was evident in their actions, and their results as the enemy retreated further. The human fleet reorganized. Shields were repaired, weapons recalibrated, and crews prepared for the next phase. Every action taken was deliberate, ensuring that they maintained control of the battlefield. Even small errors were corrected immediately, demonstrating the discipline and efficiency that defined humanity's approach to combat. The turning point of the battle had come, and with it, the humans' reputation grew across the coalition. Allies who had doubted this strategy now respected it deeply. Enemies who had underestimated the humans now feared them. And the humans themselves remained calm, silent, and focused, knowing that the fight was far from over, but confident in their ability to overcome any challenge. In the quiet, after the first major wave of action, the commander reflected on what had been achieved. The humans had demonstrated that silence, observation, and patience could be as powerful as any weapon. They had turned the enemy's mistakes into decisive victories, showing that discipline and strategy could overcome fear, technology, and numbers. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the battlefield, the human fleet prepared for the next phase of the fight. Their first strike had been successful, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had seen the power of humans at their calmest, and now it would witness how they continued to shape the course of battle through precision, observation, and strategy. The turning point was not just a moment of victory, it was a lesson. Humans had shown that in combat, silence could be more powerful than noise, observation more effective than aggression, and patience stronger than panic. Allies and enemies alike would remember this day, not just for the battle itself, but for the lesson humans taught without words, that true power often comes from restraint, understanding, and precise action. The battlefield was quiet now, but it was not empty. Smoke from destroyed enemy ships lingered in the void, drifting silently across the stars. The human fleet moved slowly among the wreckage, checking systems, repairing damage, and tending to the wounded. Though the battle had been fierce, the humans maintained their calm and focus. Their victory had not been loud or chaotic, it had been precise, disciplined, and decisive. Coalition allies floated alongside them, some in awe, others in quiet relief. Many had expected the humans to fight aggressively and recklessly, but they had been wrong. The humans' power had been shown not in loud displays or reckless attacks, but in patience, observation, and perfect timing. Allies whispered among themselves, realizing that they had witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen a style of combat that was unlike anything they had experienced before, and it had worked flawlessly. On the bridge of the human command vessel, officers monitored the remaining enemy movements. A few stragglers tried to regroup, but they were disorganized, hesitant, and quickly neutralized. Humans had anticipated these moves, positioning ships strategically to prevent any effective counterattack. Every step taken after the initial strike had been as deliberate and calculated as the first, ensuring that the advantage gained was maintained. In the hangars, engineers worked tirelessly to repair minor damage to ships and weapon systems. Pilots checked flight controls and propulsion systems, preparing for any further action that might be needed. Even minor repairs were handled with care, reflecting the humans' understanding that readiness was just as important after a victory as it was before a battle. There was no celebration, no prideful display, only quiet efficiency. Every crew member knew that success could be fleeting, and that staying focused was the only way to ensure lasting results. Among the coalition allies, respect for humans grew with every passing hour. They had seen firsthand how patience and observation could turn a battle in one decisive moment. Many leaders began to rethink their own strategies, realizing that human methods, though unfamiliar, held lessons that could not be ignored. They had underestimated the humans at their own risk, and now they understood why the galaxy feared them. The commander of the human fleet walked through the observation deck, watching the aftermath of the battle unfold. He noticed minor errors in allied ship formations and quietly gave instructions to correct them. Even in victory, humans maintained discipline, ensuring that the entire coalition fleet remained coordinated and effective. Every adjustment was subtle, every instruction purposeful. Victory was not just about defeating the enemy, it was about maintaining control and stability afterward. In the outer sectors, small groups of enemy ships attempted to escape. Some had survived the initial attacks, hoping to regroup and fight another day. But humans were relentless. They did not pursue recklessly, but they did not allow escape either. Coordinated patrols and subtle positioning ensured that these stragglers were either neutralized or forced to surrender. Every movement by the humans had a purpose, and every action reinforced their dominance on the battlefield. Inside the command vessel, a young officer observed the enemy ships being cornered and whispered quietly to a colleague. They didn't stand a chance. Every move they made was predicted. The colleague nodded in agreement. It's not just strategy. It's the way they see everything at once. They understand more than anyone else could. The observation captured the essence of the humans' effectiveness, their ability to anticipate, test plan, and to execute with precision. Meanwhile, human crews focused on the recovery and care of both allies and civilians caught in the conflict. Rescue teams moved through damaged ships, stabilizing life support systems, evacuating injured personnel, and providing immediate medical attention. There was no fanfare, no recognition. Humans simply did what needed to be done, understanding that their strength lay not only in combat, but also in the compassion and efficiency with which they handled the aftermath. As repairs continued, coalition leaders held quiet discussions. "We have underestimated them," one said, shaking his head. "They did not fight the way we expected, yet they controlled the entire battle." Another added, "And now they have ensured victory without chaos." It is remarkable. Across the galaxy, stories would soon spread of the humans who fought not with loud displays or reckless bravery, but with patience, precision, and calm control. The enemy fleet, now scattered and demoralized, posed little further threat. Their forces were fragmented, their morale low, and their ability to coordinate effectively shattered. Humans did not need to pursue a complete annihilation. They had already won. Their careful planning, observation, and decisive strikes had ensured that the enemy could not mount a meaningful comeback. The battle was over, and humans had emerged as the undisputed victors. Even as the battle concluded, humans remained vigilant. Pilots continued to patrol the area, scanning for any hidden threats. Engineers monitored ship systems, ensuring that no hidden damage could compromise readiness. Every crew member understood that victory was not an excuse for complacency. The calm efficiency that had brought them through the battle now guided them through the aftermath, in one of the smaller human vessels. A crew member reflected quietly on the events of the day. "We didn't need to shout or rush. We watched, we waited, and we acted at the right moment. That is how we won." His words, though soft, carried truth. The human fleet's strength had not been in aggression alone, but in discipline, observation, and unity. Their victory was a product of careful planning and precise execution, and it was a lesson for everyone who witnessed it. Across the coalition, admiration for humans grew into respect, and for some, fear. They had seen what humans were capable of when calm and focused, and they knew that any future conflict involving humans would demand careful consideration. The lesson was clear. Humans could turn patience into strategy, observation into advantage, and silence into power. The commander observed the ships returning from patrols and rescue missions. He felt no need for words of praise. Humans did not need recognition. They measured success by results, not applause. Every crew member understood that the work after the battle was just as important as the fight itself. They had not only defeated the enemy, but had ensured stability, readiness, and order across the sector in the quiet moments. Humans reflected on the cost of the battle. Though victory had been achieved with minimal losses, there were still wounds to tend to, systems to repair, and lessons to learn. Each crew member understood that war was not about glory, but about responsibility, about protecting lives, and about ensuring that the sacrifices made were not in vain. Even as the enemy retreated beyond the sector, news of the humans' efficiency and strategy spread quickly. Coalition allies shared reports, and stories of the silent, precise, and deadly tactics began to circulate. Across the galaxy, civilizations began to understand that humans were different, not just in combat, but in the way they approached challenges, with patience, observation, and a calm that could turn the tide of battle. The aftermath of the battle revealed another truth. Humans inspired confidence among allies and instilled fear in enemies without raising a single voice unnecessarily. Their actions spoke for them, where others relied on displays of power or intimidation. Humans relied on competence, coordination, and trust. Every decision was informed, every movement calculated, and every victory earned through skill and discipline. As ships moved back into formation and repairs were completed, humans continued to monitor the sector, ensuring that no enemy forces could regroup or return. They maintained readiness, demonstrating that true strength lies not only in victory, but in preparation for the challenges that follow. Every system, every crew member, every command was aligned with this principle, reinforcing the humans' reputation as both formidable warriors and careful strategists. Even in quiet reflection, the human commander understood the significance of what had been accomplished. The fleet had faced overwhelming odds, yet through observation, patience, and precision, they had gained a decisive advantage. They had controlled the battlefield, protected allies, neutralized threats, and demonstrated the unique power of their approach. The galaxy had witnessed a lesson in strategy, discipline, and the human way of war. In the days following the battle, coalition forces integrated lessons learned from humans into their own tactics. Leaders studied reports, observed human ships, and began to adopt elements of their methods. Humans did not demand recognition or admiration. They did not boast of their victories. Instead, they allowed their results to speak, quietly reshaping the understanding of combat across multiple star systems. The human fleet remained vigilant, even after the immediate threat had passed. Patrols continued, repairs were finalized, and the wounded were cared for. Humanity's approach to warfare was not about chaos or destruction, but about preparation, precision, and protection. They had demonstrated that even in the aftermath of combat, calm, deliberate actions could achieve far more than impulsive or reckless behavior. The coalition watched and learned, slowly realizing that humans had a gift not only in combat, but in leadership and strategy. They had shown that control, patience, and observation could turn even the most dangerous situations into opportunities for success. Allies who had doubted them now respected them. Enemies who had underestimated them now feared them. And the humans themselves continued silently, focused not on accolades, but on readiness for whatever might come next. The aftermath of the battle solidified the humans' reputation across the galaxy. They had not only won, but had done so with discipline, efficiency, and purpose. Allies and enemies alike learned that when humans acted, it was with intent, foresight, and unmatched precision. Their silent strategy, executed to perfection, had changed the course of the conflict and left a lasting impression on all who witnessed it. Even as the last of the enemy ships fled the sector, humans maintained vigilance. They repaired, observed, and prepared for future challenges. Their victory was not just in defeating the enemy, but in demonstrating the power of calm, discipline, and strategy. The galaxy had seen the humans at their best, and their reputation was now firmly established as one of unparalleled capability and quiet dominance. The galaxy had grown quieter in the wake of the battle, but the silence was not empty. It was a quiet testament to the humans' methodical strategy and discipline. Across the coalition, the story of the human fleet's calm, precise, and effective combat spread like wildfire. Tales of how humans had observed, waited, and struck only at the right moment became legend, discussed in command rooms, training simulations, and strategic conferences. Humans had proven that power was not always about speed, noise, or sheer numbers. It was about patience, observation, and understanding. Inside the human command vessel, the crew continued their work with quiet efficiency. Even after victory, humans did not celebrate extravagantly. There were repairs to oversee, patrols to coordinate, and readiness to maintain. Every officer, pilot, and engineer understood that victory was only part of the responsibility. Control of the sector, protection of allies, and preparation for future threats were equally important. Silence, after all, did not end with a battle. It became a tool for vigilance. Coalition allies still marveled at the humans' efficiency. Some whispered among themselves, comparing the human approach to their own. They do not waste energy on anger or panic, one officer noted. They focus, they wait, and they act at the exact right time. And when they do, nothing can stop them. Another added, they teach without speaking. They demonstrate through results. That is what makes them so dangerous and so valuable. Respect and curiosity began to grow alongside admiration, and even caution became part of the lesson humans imparted. The commander of the human fleet walked among the officers on the bridge. He observed quietly, offering subtle guidance when needed. There was no shouting, no dramatic orders, just calm, precise instructions. Every adjustment, every small suggestion, reinforced the fleet's readiness and cohesion. Even in victory, the humans maintained their discipline, understanding that stability after conflict was just as vital as strength during it. In the hangars, engineers and technicians worked methodically to repair damaged ships and systems. Weapons were recalibrated, engines tuned, and shields tested. Even minor issues received attention, reflecting the humans' understanding that preparedness was continuous. The fleet had fought well, but the humans knew that the galaxy was unpredictable. Remaining ready for the next challenge was part of their success. Across the sector, human pilots conducted routine patrols. They scanned for hidden threats, observed potential enemy movements, and maintained the protective perimeter around coalition assets. These patrols were quiet and efficient. There were no unnecessary displays of power, no reckless risk-taking, only observation, precision, and readiness. Even the most experienced officers noted that the humans' calm presence brought confidence to allies and uncertainty to any potential enemies. In strategic discussions with coalition leaders, the human commander spoke with measured clarity. Patience is as important as strength, he said. Observation is as powerful as firepower, and unity is stronger than individual skill. His words were simple, yet they carried weight. Coalition leaders began to realize that the humans' victories were not accidental. They were the result of careful planning, disciplined execution, and the ability to think several steps ahead. As reports came in from other sectors, humans were shown to be adaptable as well as disciplined. When unexpected skirmishes arose, human ships adjusted formation subtly, anticipating moves and countering threats without creating panic or confusion. They were flexible within their discipline, combining precision with intuition, and ensuring that the coalition fleet remained resilient under pressure. Young recruits on the human vessels watched and learned, absorbing lessons that would serve them for a lifetime. They saw that victory did not require loud displays of bravado or risky heroics. It required observation, patience, and coordination. They saw that humans acted together as one organism, where each member's role complemented the others, and where trust and discipline turned potential chaos into success. Even the enemy forces, though defeated, carried away a new understanding of humanity. Those who survived retreated to their systems, recounting the efficiency and quiet ruthlessness of the humans. They spoke of a species that could remain calm under pressure, anticipate moves with precision, and strike decisively when the time was right. Fear of humans grew across the galaxy, not because they were loud or violent, but because they were disciplined, adaptable, and unwavering in focus. Back aboard the command vessel, the human commander observed the stars. He knew that battles were temporary, but the lessons they imparted were lasting. Humans had demonstrated not only their ability to fight effectively, but also their ability to inspire confidence and caution in others. Allies could now trust humans to hold lines, secure territories, and act decisively in moments of crisis. Enemies could no longer underestimate them, and that knowledge alone was a form of power. In the hangars, engineers continued their work with quiet determination. Even as repairs were completed, systems were checked repeatedly. Weapons were tested, propulsion systems optimized, and sensors fine-tuned. Humans understood that vigilance was continuous, and that true readiness required ongoing effort. Every crew member shared this understanding, and every action reflected their collective discipline and foresight. Across the fleet, humans maintained quiet patrols and observation posts. They scanned the sector for potential threats, monitored trade routes, and ensured that allied forces remained safe. These efforts were subtle but effective. Allies noted the presence of humans as a stabilizing factor. Their calm approach reduced uncertainty, mitigated risk, and created a sense of security that extended far beyond the immediate battlefield. Even in their interactions with allies, humans remained composed and professional. They offered guidance, shared knowledge, and supported coalition strategies without imposing or boasting. They led by example, demonstrating that strength was most effective when combined with patience, observation, and careful action. Allies learned to emulate these qualities, and the coalition as a whole became more coordinated, more effective, and more resilient. Stories of human strategy spread quickly through the galaxy. Across distant sectors, species discussed the silent, precise, and patient approach humans had taken. They spoke of a species that could observe, anticipate, and act with perfection, and that could teach others the value of discipline and foresight without uttering a single boastful word. These tales would inspire strategy for generations to come. In the quiet moments aboard the command vessel, the commander reflected on the human way of warfare. Victory was not measured in destruction alone, but in control, coordination, and the preservation of life. Humans had shown that calm, observation, and patience were as lethal as any weapon. They had proven that true strength lay not only in action, but in preparation, discipline, and the ability to act at the right moment. Even as the sector stabilized, humans remained vigilant. Patrols continued, systems were monitored, and crews trained in anticipation of new challenges. They had learned that the galaxy was unpredictable, and that maintaining readiness was essential for lasting security. Their calm presence became a force multiplier, instilling confidence in allies and caution in potential adversaries. Across the coalition, leaders began to adopt elements of the human approach. Patience, observation, and precision became key lessons in training simulations and strategic planning. Humans had demonstrated that calm, calculated action could achieve more than rash aggression or reckless heroics. Their methods became a model for others, reshaping the understanding of effective combat across multiple star systems. Back aboard the fleet, young recruits reflected on the lessons they had observed. They had witnessed the power of calm, patient strategy firsthand. They understood that discipline, preparation, and trust in one another were the foundation of success. They saw that humans could act decisively without chaos, lead without arrogance, and achieve victory without unnecessary destruction. These lessons would guide them in all future missions. Even in victory, humans remained humble and focused. There was no celebration beyond quiet acknowledgement of a job well done. They understood that power was not about recognition, but about responsibility. Every crew member knew that vigilance, preparation, and discipline were continuous, and that the work of maintaining peace and security was never truly complete. The galaxy now recognized the humans' quiet strength. All eyes respected it, enemies feared it, and civilizations everywhere took note of their unique approach. Humans had demonstrated that patience, observation, and disciplined action could turn battles in their favor, inspire confidence in allies, and reshape strategic thinking across star systems. Their reputation was firmly established, not through noise or showmanship, but through results and consistency. As the fleet moved silently through the stars, the commander looked ahead, knowing that challenges would come again. But the humans were ready. Their ships were repaired, their crews trained, and their minds disciplined. They had shown the galaxy that silence could be a weapon, observation a strategy, and patience a force stronger than panic. They had proven that humans did not need to act recklessly to be effective. They needed only to act with purpose. The legacy of the battle and the silent strategy would endure. Across the galaxy, civilizations would recount the story of how humans waited, observed and struck with precision, how they inspired confidence in allies and fear in enemies, and how their discipline and foresight ensured victory even in the most dangerous circumstances. The lesson was clear. True power often lies not in noise or haste, but in calm, careful, and deliberate action. And so the human fleet continued its patrols, its repairs, and its quiet observation. Victory had been won, but the work of maintaining order, protecting allies, and preparing for the future was ongoing. Through discipline, focus, and precision, humans had reshaped the understanding of strategy across the galaxy. Their silence had become their strength, and their presence, whether in combat or in vigilance, was now a defining force in the universe.